37 trillion. I mean, that's a number so big it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, right? But believe it or not, that's roughly how many tiny, microscopic cities are humming along right now to make you, well, you.
Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to take a tour of one of those tiny cities, the most fundamental unit of life itself, the cell. But forget those boring diagrams from your biology textbook. We're going to see it for what it really is, a bustling, living metropolis that exists inside every single one of us.
You know, this whole journey into the cell city, it all kicked off over 300 years ago. A guy named Robert Hooke was peering through a very early microscope, and he saw these tiny, room-like structures in a piece of plant matter. He called them cells. And just like that, with that one simple word, he basically laid the groundwork for all of modern biology.
All right, let's start our tour. To really get a feel for the place, we got to start with the basic layout of our city. Just like any big city, a cell has its own structure, right? It has its borders, its open spaces, and of course, a central government. Turns out, the cell is organized into 3 main districts that are absolutely crucial for its survival. Okay, so here's our city map, and you can see those 3 main parts pretty clearly. See that outer boundary? That's the plasma membrane. Think of it like the city walls, this flexible double layer that keeps everything in. Then you've got the cytoplasm. That's basically everything inside those walls. It's the environment, the scaffolding, the whole city landscape. And right there in the middle, you can't miss it, is the nucleus. That's our city hall, the command center. Let's dive a little deeper into these districts. So to break it down, first, you've got the plasma membrane, the city walls, controlling what gets in and out. Then inside there's the cytoplasm. This is the city itself, you know, the environment and all the infrastructure where the real work happens. And at the very heart of it all, the nucleus. That's our city hall, the command center that's calling all the shots. Okay, so we've got the basic layout down. Now let's zoom in and check out the really cool stuff, the specialized buildings and services that make this metropolis tick. These specialized structures have a name, organelles. It literally means little organs, and that's a perfect way to think about them. They're the city's factories, its power plants, its post offices, all these little parts humming with activity inside the cytoplasm. So a big question for any city. Where does it get its stuff, and where does it get its power? Let's take a look at the industrial heart of our cell city.
Well, every city needs to make things, right? In our cell city, that job belongs to the ribosomes. These are like countless tiny factories just churning out proteins, which are the essential building blocks and machinery for pretty much everything the cell does.
Now, once those proteins are made, they can't just sit there. They need to be processed and shipped out. A lot of them first pass through this network of channels called the ER. That's the endoplasmic reticulum, before they get to the Golgi apparatus. This is basically the city's post office. The Golgi takes these raw proteins, modifies them, packages them up, and then sends them off to wherever they need to go.
Of course, running factories and a post office, that takes a ton of energy. Where does it all come from? The mitochondria. These are the power plants of the city. They take in nutrients and convert them into ATP. That's the universal energy currency that fuels every single thing happening in our little metropolis. Okay, so a city that can't import supplies or export its goods is, well, a city that's gonna fail. So how does our cell manage its border control and transportation?
It turns out there are 2 main ways to get through the city gates. The first is called passive transport. Just think of this as things flowing downhill. You know, from an area where there's a lot of something to an area where there's less. Super easy, no energy needed. The second is active transport, and it's the total opposite. This is like pushing something uphill, and it requires energy from our ATP power plants to move stuff against its natural flow. Here's a great look at passive transport in action. See on the left how you've got a high concentration of those little particles? Just watch. Over time, they naturally spread out across the membrane until everything is balanced out on the right. It's just this simple process of evening things out. No energy required. But what if the city needs to pile up materials in one specific place? That's where active transport comes in, like with this sodium-potassium pump. See how it's using ATP as fuel? It's actively pumping sodium ions out and potassium ions in, fighting against the natural gradient. It's like a toll booth that you have to pay with energy to get through. All right, so we've got the city layout, the factories, the power grid, the transport systems. But who's in charge here? What's the master plan that everyone is following? For that, we've got to go back to City Hall.
Right inside the nucleus, we find it. The master plan for the entire city. The blueprint for the entire body. DNA. This incredible molecule has all the genetic information, all the instructions that dictate how to build every single protein and basically the entire cell.
So how does City Hall actually get its instructions out to all those factories? Well, it's this really clever two-step process. First up is transcription. Inside the nucleus, a working copy of a specific gene, a blueprint, is made. This copy is called mRNA. Then comes translation. That mRNA copy travels out of City Hall to a ribosome factory, where its code is translated to build a very specific protein. It's amazing, from blueprint to a finished product, just like that.
But a city doesn't just run, does it? It also has to grow, repair itself, and multiply. For our cell city, this kind of urban expansion happens through this elegant and super precise process called mitosis. And here's how it works. First, in prophase, the DNA blueprints get copied and packed up tightly. Then, in metaphase, all those copied chromosomes line up right down the middle. In anaphase, they get pulled apart so each side gets a perfect, identical set. And finally, in telophase, the city just pinches in the middle and splits in two, creating two perfect, identical new cities, each with its own complete set of blueprints. Wow!
And that's the real magic, isn't it? This one process, repeated trillions of times over, takes us from a single cell to this vast, complex nation of cells. A nation where every single one of these microscopic cities is working together with its neighbors to build and maintain the most complicated thing we know of, a human being, you.
Which leaves us with one last, really fascinating question. If every single one of these 37 trillion cities starts with the exact same DNA master plan, how did they become so different? How does one cell know to become a brain cell, while another becomes a heart cell and another a skin cell? How do they specialize to build something so incredibly complex? Well, that's a story for another day.